Hi guys! So, like I said, I'm gonna talk about Bellamy first. I've already done a character video bio for her, so I'm not gonna talk about all the same stuff I talked about in that one. I'm gonna talk about some other stuff that I didn't talk about in that one. So if you haven't watched her other character bio, I suggest you watch that first because otherwise you'll be confused. So I told you guys about Bellamy's family and how they get eaten and about her living in the forest and then being kidnapped by humans and stuff. All that human stuff happens like way later. Like she lives in the forest for like 5 years because her parents die when she's 11, and then she gets kidnapped by the humans when she's 16. So there's a lot of things happening in that 5-year period. So she learns from Rudolph how to be an herbalist. He's their kind of doctor, medicine person, or troll. And she learns from him how to do all that kind of stuff. So that's all happening throughout her whole time. She's getting better at doing medicine and stuff. And then another thing that I didn't mention is that she's chronically ill. And I know is that she just gets sick really easy and is like always kind of sick. She has like a bad cough and she is like really weak all the time. So that's her whole childhood. She's kind of this weak, sickly kind of child. Her parents are murdered and then she lives in the forest with the trolls, and she notices that her symptoms are like gone. And she doesn't know what it is about the forest that is making her well. So that's like a thing that's kind of like inkling in her head, and she's not really sure how that works. And then one night, she hears a voice calling to her. That's the voice calling to her now. She hears a voice calling to her, and she goes out into the forest. This is whenever she's a little bit older. I think she's like 13 or 14. She goes out to the forest and she's like calling out like, I know that you called me here, what do you want? And she turns around and there's this giant creature that is kind of a mishmash of creatures. I think kind of like in Princess Mononoke, the forest spirit, kind of like that, but it has like an owl face and it's got like a body like a hyena. It's got like feathers on the top part, and then it's turns into fur, and it's got feet like a capybara. If you don't know what that looks like, you gotta go look it up, because I was like, I know what they look like in my mind, and then I was looking, I was at the zoo, and I was looking at the capybaras, and I was like, oh my god, it's the feet of the forest guardian, which is what this creature is. And it's called Bellamy to the forest, and she's like in awe, and she can hear it like speaking to her in her head. She's having a conversation with this forest spirit. It's not like really great at language because it does never talk to humans. It's the way that communication tends to happen in the forest is all more like telepathic, but it's not even necessarily like they're speaking words to you in your mind. It's more like feelings and thoughts and stuff, and that's how she communicates with the trolls also, because they have their own little language that they speak, but she can't speak that language, so they tend to speak more like on a telepathic thing, and she gets better at that the longer she's in the forest. So she's speaking with the forest spirit, and he's kind of talking to her, and then he gets to the point where he's like, why do you think you're getting better in the forest? Why do you think you're having these strange things happen to you, like being able to have telekinesis and other interesting things she's finding out about herself? Because throughout this whole time, this few years that she's been in the forest, she's noticed that not only is she getting stronger, she's also like has these weird powers. And so she's kind of just thinking like, oh, it's just the forest rubbing off on me or something like that. And the forest guardian pretty much tells her, no, you are the next forest guardian. She's the guardian of this magical forest. because this forest guardian is like super old, and they're not immortal, but they do live for a very long time. So she finds out from the forest guardian that she is next in line, and she's obviously shocked at this information, but then it kind of all starts to make sense, and then the forest guardian is kind of helping her understand what's happened. Pretty much the forest, I have no other better way to explain it other than gives birth to her. She's just created, not from any like two beings doing the thing. The forest is like knows that it's gonna need a new guardian soon, so it has to create a new guardian, and so it creates Bellamy when she's a little baby. The trolls are like, we don't really know how to take care of a human baby, so let's take her to the humans. So they take her to the first house that they see, and it happens to be, of course, Bellamy's future mom and dad, and they take care of her, and they don't know really where she comes from. They don't have any idea really. But they do know that she's like super sickly, and they kind of, after a while, they kind of connect that she's somehow related to the forest, because when she's near the forest, she doesn't have symptoms. And in the very beginning of the story, when it opens up, I wish I could write better and then just read you guys her story, because it would be much more interesting than me just babbling on about it. But I'm working on writing it. It is not going to be very good, but in little pieces I write it every once in a while. So in the beginning of the story, Bellamy is seen outside the forest collecting like little sticks and rocks and stuff, and she just really likes that stuff, especially if it's from the forest, and she collects it and has like her little display, like a shelf that she has all these little knickknacks on. When she's speaking with the forest guardian, she realizes that the trolls have been putting that stuff out there because every little bit helps. Because if a magical creature that's from the forest is outside of the forest, they will die eventually. So because Bellamy lives close enough to the forest, she only lives like maybe a mile from the forest, or 2 miles. So the trolls like put out all these little things that she's naturally drawn to, because she's naturally drawn to the forest anyways. So she collects all these things and takes them back to her house, and they kind of help alleviate her symptoms a little bit and kind of keep her going for a while. So her parents let her collect these things because they're kind of noticing like there's a strange connection. But they love Bellamy, and even though they're terrified of the forest, with some good reason, because it eventually murders them, they still love Bellamy enough that they don't want to be like, ah, she's a witch or something. So they just let her have the little things, and they let her go over by the forest. So they like forbid her, never go inside the forest because it's super dangerous, which is all true. As she's growing up, she's very sickly because she doesn't live inside the forest, so she's really weak, but she lives close enough to the forest, and she's got her little knickknacks. She's able to survive outside of the forest for that 11 years. And then the dreadful darkness comes and murders her parents. It's not related necessarily to Bellamy, but when it murders her parents, it also kidnaps her, and it tries to murder her too, because I don't know if all the creatures in the forest know who Bellamy is, but I think they kind of get this feeling from her, and it makes them nervous. So I think that the darkness is attracted to her, because it's like, what is this thing? Like, I don't know what it is, but I don't know if I like it, and it kind of just puts all the magical things on edge. So I think that might be one of the reasons why Bellamy's house was targeted by the dreadful darkness. But the dreadful darkness, it's not like real picky about who it devours. So the dreadful darkness kidnaps her and takes her back to the forest, and because she's the forest guardian, it can't kill her, though it really tries, but she's able to summon the power that's buried down in there, because she's not in the forest. So her magical abilities are the longer you're out of the forest, the less magical abilities you have, and the weaker you are. And so the more she's in the forest, the more powerful she becomes, because it's like a feedback loop. And the same goes for the forest. The forest loses its power the longer she's not in it. And because it still has a forest guardian in there, it's okay. But once that forest guardian is gone, it's in big trouble if Bellamy is not living in the forest. It will eventually die because they are completely connected and they need to have each other to survive. So when the dreadful darkness kidnaps her, she's inside of it and it's trying to suck all of her life energy out, and then I feel like she can call the power of the sun or something. She calls upon the power of the sun without knowing that she's doing it. She's like unconscious, and she like obliterates that part of the dreadful darkness and is able to escape. So that is how she escapes the dreadful darkness. And she doesn't know that that's how she escaped. She just woke up in the forest and was like, I don't even know what's going on. The forest guardian pretty much tells her all that. I don't know if the forest guardian dies at this point or if it continues to live on while she's still gaining strength. I'm not that far in my thinking process, but it's a possibility that he dies there, and that's why he's told her, don't leave the forest because the forest will die. And so will all the trolls and everything in it would die. So that's why whenever she's kidnapped by the humans later on, when she's like 16, it's a big deal. It's a big deal to the people who live in the forest. It's a big deal to Bellamy because she knows she will die. She knows the forest will die, and the forest... I mean, it's not just because she's part of it, but it's because she loves it. Like, it's a relative, like it's her child or something. Like, she's so deeply connected to it that, of course, she would be devastated if it was no more, and then also she would die. When she's kidnapped by the humans, it's a big deal, and that's why Ludwig has to go and try to save her. And then, of course, he puts himself in danger because being a magical thing can't really leave the forest for very long without getting deaded. So, that was a very long video. I apologize. I tried to keep it short, but there's lots of little ins and outs. I really like Bellamy's story a lot. I really like Bellamy a lot, her character, and I hope that people will like her more. I know Tommy's got a little bit of a fan club on Instagram, but I hope Bellamy, I kind of want people to like Bellamy just as much, because Tommy's easy to like because she's feisty and funny, but Bellamy's cool. Like, she's kick-ass and defeats the dreadful darkness. And that's a part of her story that's like another part. I feel like it's like several parts. Like, she finds out about being the forest guardian and she defeats the dreadful darkness, which is actually like a sickness on the forest because the old forest guardian is really weak because he's old, and the new forest guardian is not living in the forest, so there's like the dreadful darkness is like a sickness that the forest has that's taking over it, and even so the creatures are terrified of the dreadful darkness. She has to be in the forest in order to defeat the dreadful darkness. So that's another one of the cool things she does, is she defeats the dreadful darkness, and then she has to... Oh, and then I also forgot to mention that the reason she's human-y shaped and not animal-y shaped is that she's the connection between the forest and magic and the humans. Oh, and then also, the longer she's in the forest, the more magical she is, like I said that before, but it also changes her body as well. Like, it makes her super tall, like kind of like a tree. That's why she's kind of funny shaped. Like, I imagine that her family is not shaped like this. Like, I imagine her mom is like really fat and like her parents and her little sister are like just average humans, where she's always been kind of gangly and oddly proportioned because the forest has never made a human before. So this is kind of like taking, you know, an educated guess at how humans are shaped, but they got it a little bit weird, and that's why Bellamy is a little bit weird shaped. So that's pretty much Bellamy. Like I said, I wish that I could write. It would be cooler if I could like read you a cool story or do like an animation or a stop motion or something, but that is not likely to happen soon. Maybe someday, but I want you guys to know about her story before however long that takes for me to do that. So, thanks for watching, and I'm going to talk about Lawrence next. Bye!